flu map. And making amendments to those, in my mind, doing it on a case-by-case basis, on a one-off basis, should be an extraordinary thing, not a typical process. Typical process should be an annual review or something like that, where we take a look at, what sites and so forth. And I guess that's how I feel about it.
Yep.
And Abby, can we ask the city attorney to advise us of whether a public hearing for a flu map and zoning ordinance amendment, in this case for mixed use urban, which is a 10-story height limit, would also include something lesser like the mixed use avenue, which is a 5-story height limit, or whether that would have to be noticed as a completely separate action?
For the flu map specifically?
Well, the flu map would not need to be amended. If they applied for rezoning to mixed use avenue, they would not need a flu map amendment.
Right.
But a public hearing notice for a zoning map amendment to mixed use urban, would that include also something, it's the idea of lesser included?
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you. Our city attorney is on the Zoom.
Well, we have a month. But
Yes. Okay.
because we're not being asked to set a public hearing for the zoning map amendment, just for the flu map amendment right now, right?
I just want to comment that I'm a little uncomfortable setting both hearings until we actually see a concept. I don't know if this commission remembers, but council voted down a flu map amendment for a project on Terrace Avenue that had one proposal already, and the developers had agreed to a different concept, but hadn't sketched it out yet for us to see, and council voted it down.
Because all we have right now is the 4 or 5 page memo that they've written,
That's all we
request,
as a
that's all we
commission
have,
have.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's correct. That's all that the commission has. We have a separate submittal for a rezoning. However, my understanding is the drawings that are included in that submittal are not necessarily what is being proposed to be constructed. I would feel more comfortable if the applicant had a chance to make some sort of a presentation. So, and could explain that further.
Is the applicant
Can you,
Present?
I'm sorry, Abby, can you remind us, concept review is, a developer can choose to go through that,
Mhm.
and we provide that opportunity, but we can't require that, right?
That is my understanding, in the new code too, is that it's a discretionary process. We typically would recommend it, especially if there's a rezoning application. And we did
Yeah.
recommend it in this case.
is the applicant willing?
I don't see a representative from this agenda item, on the meeting. If anyone is here, actually, maybe I should just take a step back and say that we have a couple of new processes in place for in maintaining integrity of the Zoom meeting this evening. So one is that we have a waiting room enabled, and Daphne and I are both watching to let people into the Zoom who may be in the waiting room. And then also, if someone wishes to speak on behalf of this agenda item, they would need to raise their hand, and they would need to have one of the hosts ask them to unmute. So I don't see anyone here that is raising their hand on this agenda item, so I am assuming that no one is here on behalf of this application.
That's
So
interesting.
given, Alder Hanaiba as a reminder to us of council's previous actions, and given that we don't have even a concept plan or a site plan available to us, I don't see any rush for us to set up public hearing for a flu map amendment, because usually, as Randy said, the flu map amendment requires some extraordinary level of justification. So, and your staff note said that our policies require that a flu map amendment requires 30-day notice?
30 days because we view that as an amendment to the comp plan. So,
So it's a chapter
Mhm.
nine
class
eighty-five,
two.
class two notice. yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Now, we
Same as the
could,
rezoning.
even without the flu map amendment, we could administratively still set the notice for the rezoning application if the plan commission wanted to see the rezoning application. It's just that no action could be taken to approve that unless there was, prior to any approval of that, there would need to be an amendment to the flu map.
Or we include that as a contingency, is that an option?
I would be a little bit concerned just based on some recent, cases about consistency.
Mhm. Yeah,
I'm familiar with those same cases, right, so. And the requirement in state law for consistency goes one way, but not the other way, that changing a future land use map to a higher use does not require you to rezone to that higher use. But in order to rezone to that higher use, you would need to have previously changed the future land use map to allow it. Right, because it's a future land use map, so it means that you intend to allow development in the future. It doesn't mean you have to change the zoning right now. See, any change to zoning has to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. But just because the comprehensive plan shows a higher density use doesn't require you to rezone today. I hope I said that right. Matt's nodding his head. so. Okay, given that, can I withdraw my motion?
you can make a substitute.
Can I make a substitute motion? Well, I can withdraw my motion, right? Or,
I'll make a substitute motion
okay, there you go,
to defer action to set a public hearing
there you go.
for the amendment to the comprehensive plan for the future land use map for the Imperial.
I will second that substitute.
Any further discussion?
Is there a trigger for deferment when it would come back? Or are we just deferring this?
We're deferring it until the applicant has a,
I don't think we need to specify.
I didn't say we
Yeah,
needed to,
no,
I'm
no,
just-
no, right, but I think the applicant, if they go back and watch this video, will get enough information, and working with staff will understand what the commission's concerns are.
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor of the substitute motion to defer action on setting a public hearing for the amendment to the comprehensive plan for the future land use map change for the Imperial at 2039 Allen Boulevard and 6136 University Avenue, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to item number 2, request for conditional use permit CUP for an ancillary retail use Madison Liquidators, 3310 Deming Way. And the staff recommendation is to approve resolution 2025-43 to approve a conditional use permit for, let me find my agenda because that's not what it is. Let's see. For an ancillary retail use of, in the airport business park.
Shaw, I will make that motion to approve resolution 2025-43 to approve conditional use permit for ancillary retail use in the Airport Road Business District.
And Adams will second that.
All right, so we have a motion. And we have a second. And I understand we have some discussion. Staff, would you give us some background information?
Sure. We sent out a revised findings of fact document today that provided a little bit more information on the runway protection zone. I think the Plan Commission is somewhat familiar with the runway protection zone from the concept review, where we had asked the applicant to show the delineation of the zone on the submittal that would be brought forward. But we don't have RPZs that cover many properties in Middleton. So just for your just as a reminder, a runway protection zone is a trapezoidal area that is centered over the extended runway center line with the purpose of protecting people and property on the ground near an airport. In this particular instance, the RPZ was established in 2004. And since that date of when it was established, the guidance around RPZs from the FAA has changed. So there are new guiding documents from the FAA that say that there are certain land uses that require coordination with the FAA, one of them being buildings and structures of any kind. So within the revised findings of fact, the overall recommendation has not changed, aside from fixing the typo, thank you, Commissioner Shaw, that said medical use to retail use. The overall recommendation has not changed, but we did include some additional information in the findings of fact document that just further explains that the concerns about the RPZ are tied to 3 of the different conditions from our ordinance that are requirements to be met in order to satisfy the findings of fact for a conditional use. The only other change that was made was to the resolution itself, and that was just to reflect the date of the revised findings, which is today's date, September 9th.
Abby, you mentioned that the revised wording in the findings of fact brings in requirements from our ordinance. Which ordinance is that?
That is the zoning ordinance.
So the zoning ordinance does give the city some zoning control by which it can attach a condition to the CUP approval?
Yes, yeah,
Can we see
there
that,
are,
please?
yeah, here, let me just pull up the section on findings of fact. Just give me a minute. I'm not as fast as Daphne. Okay, so, it's in section 10.10.32 of the city code, which is conditional use permit procedures. And, oh, thank you, Daphne. So, the reason that it is redlined in here is because this is pulled from Unicode, that houses all the city ordinances, and we only update Unicode, I think, quarterly. So there were changes that were made to this section of the ordinance within the last quarter that haven't been reflected in the overall document yet. So, under the findings of fact, you can see that it requires consistency with the comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan has quite a bit of language around protecting the runways and ensuring safe operations of the airport. So I updated the findings of fact to include that. Findings of fact also require that the conditional use should not result in a substantial or undue adverse impact on nearby property, the character of the neighborhood, environmental factors, etc., including the public health, safety, or general welfare. And then the last item, my eyes are not good enough to read on the screen. But let me pull back up the supporting document here. So the last item, number 5, talks about the potential public benefits outweighing any potential adverse impacts on the proposed conditional use after taking into consideration the applicant's proposal. And so those 3 items were areas of concern that we had, not with the overall permit for the land use, but just in terms of the current site design. So we're supportive of the land use and the application for the conditional use, as long as the conditions that we're proposing related to the RPZ are met. And we had outlined 3 different ways that that consideration could be ameliorated.
Commissioner Paulson?
So I think one way to think about it is within state statute, there's kind of preconditions on conditional use and post conditions. So the preconditions are that it won't burden adjacent property owners with potential benefits. But then, once we decide, yes, the use is permitted, we can attach conditions as listed in our ordinance to help ensure that those come about. So I guess the question I have on the runway protection zone is the term zone, I think, is confusing for a lot of people because it's not a zoning ordinance. The runway protection zone is an FAA requirement. Is that correct? But we also enforce that through a height limit in proximity through a zoning ordinance. So my question relates to Tim Carey's email that we were sent this afternoon. And I guess to ask our attorney, does the RPZ actually encumber a property, or is the RPZ a state, well, a federal through the State Department of Aeronautics or Bureau of Aeronautics? Does it actually encumber the property, or is it just kind of a general restrictions that apply?
Well, it's an area that the FAA requires us to protect, and we can protect that through one of various ways. We can acquire property rights in the form of fee simple interest, all the way to easements, and we have done that on a different lot where the RPZ nearly fully covered the entire lot. But we may also protect the runway protection zone by regulation, which is here what we're doing through the SIP and conditional use process. Now, we are also, of course, as you know, in the process of trying to get that runway protection zone moved, in which case all this stuff becomes moot, but that has not yet occurred. But it is really, it's our obligation as the city to the FAA to enforce these areas. It's part of our grant assurances to the FAA. I don't know if the FAA or state would have independent authority to do something should somebody build within it, or if they just take some kind of action against the city, up to and including action against grants that we've received. But I would hope that we're never going to get to that area, because I think we have ample language in our ordinance. This is not an arbitrary thing we are placing. The runway protection zone is very clearly defined in our airport master plan. Our comprehensive plan refers to that plan as well, and talks about the need to do what we have to do to protect the airport approaches, and this is clearly part of that. So I think these conditions are in our ordinance, and approaching in this manner is entirely appropriate, if not part of our obligation as the airport operator to protect the runway protection zone.
So
Matt?
in that sense, if the RPZ is not relocated, then if we approve the SIP with a building that has a portion of it in the RPZ, in essence, that building could not be built, right? Because they would not have met this condition.
Well, right, yeah, I mean, yeah, the SIP, yeah, is as a condition. Well, right, under this, yeah, if we approve the SIP completely separate and we just approve this conditional use permit subject to this condition, that is true. But I think it's important to recognize both of these in the SIP and CUP, because there are uses to which this property can be put that don't require a CUP, but we still need to protect
Right.
the area. So I think it's appropriate to consider these in
So
both.
by attaching this condition to the CUP, we're saying that if they can't move the RPZ or get the FAA to approve, they can't build this building.
But the
Not
C-
in this location, correct?
in this
And
location.
they have zero control over the FAA. That's really our job, is to get the FAA to allow us to move it, or to take action ourselves to implement one of the provisions in the airport master plan, which is to shorten the runway so that the RPZ is entirely on city property and not even,
This is the north-south runway.
this
right?
is the north-south
Right.
runway, which is according to the airport master plan, is the least used.
It's the
uh,
unpaved one, right?
It's the unpaved one. It's usually
Currently
closed in
unpaved,
winter.
yes.
I'd love to get a breakdown of how much it costs, because we're right now paying $114,000 a year for a navigation easement for the property that is largely encumbered by the RPZ.
Correct.
What does that come to per operation or per user? I feel like the potential benefits to the city of the proposed facility in the form of expanded employment options and expanded tax base outweigh the potential adverse impacts on the north-south grass runway.
My question is that, that Tim Carey says, he doesn't want the property encumbered by the RPZ with the CUP, but isn't the property encumbered by the RPZ regardless of whether we approve the CUP?
If it is, then the city is obligated to make whole.
But we're just gonna memorialize that RPZ to the effect that it's in place during the approval of the CUP, not that it's changing really
Mhm.
the RPZ.
Well, it's not clear to me that that's the case, because clearly in the federal regulations and in our grant assurances, we have been tasked with an affirmative task to do things to protect the runway protection zone area.
Sure.
I honestly don't know with certainty that there is no other independent legal authority. If we were just to approve this without these conditions, I can't say for certain that there is no restriction on them building there, but I do know that the obligations to protect these areas by either acquiring property rights or enacting regulations is an affirmative obligation placed upon the city. And so I don't recommend testing.
Not be doing our job in granting a CUP without these conditions.
Without
Correct.
some conditions.
some
I still maintain that a different condition could be something entirely under the city's control, which would be to shorten, implement.
Well, I think that would satisfy A. If we shorten the runway, the runway protection zone goes along with geometric relationship to the runway. So if we shorten the runway such that the runway protection zone is elsewhere, I think that is also what could happen under A. C is another route. I don't know that it happened any more quickly than the process the city has already undertaken. But the point is that through these zoning approvals, I believe we have an obligation to make sure that nothing is built there until one of these things happens. And I do believe that this is a pretty comprehensive list of all the real options.
So.
Some of them are under the city control, at least two of them under the property owner's control, at least to some degree.
Commissioner Bruce?
Yes, could we just amend or add to condition A to just specifically state that that the north-south runway, an option to relocate the RPZ would be for the city to shorten the north-south runway?
Matt, what do you think?
Well,
I feel like
I guess what I would prefer to do is simply, maybe we just delete. I mean, what is after the runway, after it says RPZ in the colon, all of that is really just a note. Yeah, beginning there is really just a note of what we are doing. I would prefer to just refer to relocation or removal of the runway protection zone in this location. And that could encompass several different things, but I guess I don't, the plan commission, I don't know if anybody has really analyzed the relative merits of shortening or doing other things to the runway and tying that kind of direct entirely within the city's control sort of approval, I think could be a problem.
So you're suggesting we could change it to say, this includes a requirement for satisfaction of the runway protection zone by either relocation or removal of the protection zone from the property?
Yes, I think that would be a good way to state it, and that would include different
I
options.
find that to be more acceptable because I'll be honest, before we even received a message today from Mr. Carey, when I was preparing for this meeting and I read these conditions, they struck me as disingenuous on the part of the city because we're basically saying, sure, you can build there, but you have to either get the FAA to act, and I can tell you, we've had Brian Gatto's on the phone with them every month trying to get them to allow us to move the RPZ. Alter the building design, that doesn't seem like something easy to do at this stage in the game. Or getting approval from the FAA, which is the same thing as item A. Basically, it relies on the FAA. So they all seemed like really undesirable options, if I look at it from the perspective of the applicant.
Well, I think it's not disingenuous. I think it's saying the use is allowed. We think it's a conditional use that meets our standards. But as a condition of imposing that use on that property, you have to deal with the runway protection zone issue, which is, so we're granting it to you, the use, but we're saying you can't build the building you're planning on building until the RPZ issue has been dealt with.
Yeah, and I'm
Right,
not even sure it's the building itself. Is it just the site plan that's the problem?
It's,
Right,
it's
the
a
building
portion
could
of the
be-
building, yeah.
You couldn't move could you flip the site plan you're saying
I'm
to
just
put the
wondering.
building on the west side and then the parking on the east side in
Yeah,
the RPZ?
yes, yes. Is this another site plan that would make this work?
Yeah, so the conditional use permit would basically be saying you can't build a building.
He hasn't
in
raised
the
his
RPC.
hand, but I
I wonder if Mr. Carey would like to weigh in.
can.
Anyone
Tim
here on
Carey,
behalf-
if you wanted to speak, I tried to ask you to unmute. There we go.
I don't care to speak. Matt knows our position. He's been in communication with our attorneys, and I'm not prepared to further defend or negotiate on behalf of this client who simply is buying this property. So no, I don't have anything else to say at this point.
Okay, thank you. All right.
I mean, I think we're all pretty clear that the use is fine. And when we get to the site plan is generally fine. It has a couple issues, but you just can't build a building in the runway protection zone. So either you have to move the building or move the runway protection zone. And I think that's what the CUP conditions are saying.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't see that we have any latitude there. We
can't allow a building in the runway protection zone.
right.
We just
Unfortunately,
can't.
that's the case.
Yeah. But granting the conditional use permit with that condition allows them to move forward and maybe either move the building or move their RPZ, right?
Right. Well, I like the change that Matt has suggested because it doesn't put all the burden explicitly on the applicant to do something that the city has been unable to do. It leaves it vague enough that, you know, the relocation or removal of the runway protection zone is clearly not that on the applicant, it's on the city.
I'll make that as a motion to alter condition 1A to say relocation or removal of runway protection zone, RPZ, and to strike the sentence after the colon. To amend the resolution
And it's
as
just,
such.
it's just 1A that's showing on the screen.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so you're, Commissioner Paulson, you're
Moving to
moving to amend. I'll second
the res-
that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of amending the motion to say relocation or removal of runway protection zone and strike the remainder of paragraph 1A, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. And now going back to the main motion as amended, to approve resolution 2025-43 to approve a conditional use permit for, sorry, I still have the medical one, for an ancillary retail use in the Airport Road Business Park, amended to state in 1A relocation or removal of runway protection zone and strike the rest of the paragraph 1A. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to the specific implementation plan for a new building, Madison Liquidators at 3310 Deming Way. We have a long motion.
I would, well,
A recommendation from staff is to find that the criteria for approval of an SIP are met and approve the SIP deferred effective upon completion of, and then there are 10?
Yes.
Okay. At least one of which will need to change now.
I'll move to approve this SIP and deferred effective upon completion of the 10. I'll make the motion so we can discuss upon the 10 listed there.
Okay,
With the amendment to condition 2A to be exactly as in the conditional use permit just approved.
okay.
I'll second that.
That was Shaw?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, and so the change to 2A is identical to the change we just made to 1A,
Yes.
correct? Just for clarification. Okay, any further discussion? Oh, I did have a question about the landscaping. Do we know which plant species are native? Because I know daylilies and hostas aren't. And I just wondered if the landscaping plan complies with our 75% requirement for natives.
It's been a little while since I looked at the landscaping plan, so hold on, let me just pull it up here.
With that, we had previously said that in PUDs approved long before we had the new zoning ordinance, for site plan review, we would still apply the landscape requirements of the current ordinance.
Yep.
Because the existing SIP is silent on the landscape issue, right?
Mhm.
Yes. So I did review the landscape ordinance or the landscape plan that was submitted, and I determined that it was consistent with the requirements, but I don't recall specifically on the native species question. And I probably could have spelled that out a little bit better in the staff report too, so my apologies for that.
Well, like I said, I was just looking at the table and, you know, like the marsh blazing star and common oak sedge, that's all good. But if you scroll up. So the bioretention basin plant list, A-OK, but if you keep going up,
Oh, there we go.
these are the ones that, and I don't know if staff can, give guidance to applicants to make sure that they, in addition to noting the quantity and type, maybe also indicate this is native or not, to make it easier on you all.
So they did include a picture of our landscaping checklist that we would provide to them where, you know, they fill out an Excel table and it tabulates everything. And so in this table that they've provided, it says they have 98% native plantings. And I'm guessing the bioretention basin helped a lot with
Yeah.
that, but yeah.
Can we go back up? I just would ask staff to confirm those numbers,
Okay.
because like I said, there's a lot of these are not natives.
Would you like to add that as an 11th condition?
Sure. Let me see how this reads.
But they've,
Upon completion of confirmation by staff that the landscaping plan meets the requirements for native plants in our zoning code. Or meets our zoning code's requirements for native plantings. I like that better. Okay, so I'm moving to add an 11th, to amend the motion to add an 11th condition, and that is confirmation by staff that the landscaping plan meets the zoning code's requirement for native plantings.
I'll second that amendment.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the amendment to add item number 11, confirmation by staff that the landscaping plan meets the zoning code requirement for native planting, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion is amended. Any further discussion?
So I think there's two site plan issues that we should discuss, probably more, but, so one of the things highlighted in staff recommendations is that, or discussion is that the GIP, the underlying PUD, prohibits certain types of, can you scroll up to the staff report? Prohibits certain types of, engineered metal facades, and that we should, there we go. In terms of architecturally integrated with the building design, prefabricated metal siding. And I don't know if we need a finding on that. And certainly I defer to Randy as an architect, but the architecture, at least in the SIP, looked like it conformed with the other buildings around there and is a nice quality. It doesn't seem to have that metal siding, but I'm a little unclear. The building is a pre-engineered metal building, but it wasn't clear to me what the surfaces being applied were.
I looked at that as well. You know, that the building standards are fairly big, actually, you know, they give us a lot of latitude. And, you know, certainly this is a prefabricated metal siding. It's discouraged, but if you look right next door, Kiva's.
Yeah.
So I think it's consistent with what's there. You know, I had made a comment in the concept review stage, you know, for the architects to do what they could to make this an attractive building. You know, I'd hope that they continue their efforts to make this, you know, a good quality building and something that everybody's going to be proud of. But I don't think the fact that it's metal siding is an issue for me.
Okay. So the second big concern I have is really a traffic flow issue. So I'm wondering, Daphne, if you can bring up the C100 site plan. It's just more of a concern that I wanted to raise, and the TIA will probably bring this up. Oh, and there it does. Engineering staff have concerns about the northern driveway location, which is, I wonder whether that's too close to Airport Road, particularly for left turns, westbound Airport Road, turning left into this property. You'd then need to make a pretty quick right to find this place. And if other cars are coming behind you, it might be a traffic flow and stacking issue. I'm not sure what can be done about it.
I believe, I
but-
think Airport Road has a median.
Yep,
And
that's where our self-made man
Yes.
Yeah,
sculpture is.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't actually be able, it would be a right in, right out, I believe, at least at that top corner.
Well, so someone could turn left off of Airport Road,
Oh, yes, yeah. Mhm,
get onto Deming, and then make a sudden right.
mhm.
There's probably enough space for someone to go around them, but it might stack the interchange. But the problem is, to solve that, you'd move the driveway further south, which would then be pretty close to the southern driveway, which I'm guessing is mostly for, well, as I read the site plan, the southern driveway is mostly for trucks and business vehicles, and then the customers to the showroom and presumably employees would use the northern driveway. Is that correct?
That-
Is anybody here that wants to speak on behalf of the applicant? Or on the Zoom?
Is Tim still on? Or
Nick
are you the
Fedura.
engineering?
Nick is the architect.
Oh.
Would you come to the microphone, please? Thank you.
Nick with Sketchworks Architects.
Okay.
Can you restate the question for me, please?
Yeah, is the northern driveway for customers and the southern driveway primarily for truck traffic at the warehouse?
Yeah, so the northern right, so at the north end of the building is primarily where customers will be because the showroom is on kind of that northeast corner.
Yeah.
At the southern end is rental space for warehouses, so primarily how it'll be used.
So could a customer coming north on Deming, oh, there's a median, so could they turn left into the southern driveway or probably not?
I'd have to look, I don't have it,
I
that visual in front of me.
Like they
They
could.
could for
Could.
the southern driveway, yes.
Yeah.
So just as you're moving forward, you might consider signage directing customers to the northern driveway so that you're not interfering with truck traffic. I don't know how much truck traffic there will be, but the real question is, how close is this driveway to Airport Road?
Yeah.
And that, I mean, we're making the acceptance by the Public Works Committee and the engineering staff of the TIA a condition of site plan approval, but the question is, what would it do to your site plan to move that driveway further south if the TIA says it's too close to Airport Road?
I mean, I can't answer that initially without having the civil engineer look at it. I mean, with how far the building could shift, there's multiple domino effect there, so.
I mean, I think I'd be inclined to approve the site plan as is with that condition, recognizing that if the TIA says it's too close, you might have to alter the site plan enough that it would have to come back to us.
Mhm.
How much can we let staff approve a slight amendment to a site plan without having to come before us, or does any change have to come back before us?
Well, item 8 says satisfaction of any TIA requirements.
Yeah. But if that means shifting the building,
It would be relatively easy for them to to just reverse the parking with the drive aisle on the north side of that building and gain another 15 feet without doing anything
Yeah.
else to the site plan.
That's what I
So
was
maybe,
wondering, yeah.
maybe that happens, and I would be certainly, that could be a staff approval. Because it doesn't really change much at all. But if the building starts moving significantly, I think then we probably want to see it.
So you're saying shift the parking stalls so they're on the other side of the driveway? Does that interfere as far as ADA compliance? Is that an issue?
Well, it's certainly,
be.
no, I don't really think it necessarily, I don't think it would affect the ADA.
Okay.
No. It isn't ideal, but it.
No,
would
I
solve-
understand, but
yeah.
I just don't want to put them in a difficult situation.
Yeah. Nick could be able to answer that question.
True. Asking the wrong architect. Is that gonna be, would that be an issue if that was what was deemed necessary?
I mean, so you're saying to flip it so you'd have to cross the drive aisle to get at the building?
Yeah, just reverse the drive aisle with the parking spaces.
Yeah, I mean, it could be done. Yes, I mean, like multiple, larger parking lots, you have to cross drive aisles to get at, so it's definitely possible.
I mean, I think we're saying we like the use. It's a good addition to that neighborhood. It's a good business to have. We approve the conditional use, the site plan works, but you're gonna have the RPZ issue and the drive access issue, which are in some ways out of our control.
Can I ask a question about the RPZ?
Yeah.
Our civil engineer did some research into it and said that, based on their due diligence, the current floor elevation of 926 gives us a 24-foot height, and they would have a height limit at 950. So we are under the zoning height requirements that would be needed for that. So I don't know how that ties into the RPZ, but according to what they've looked up, the height is underneath that.
I think
limit.
there's two separate issues.
Right.
We regulate the height of buildings near the airport through our zoning ordinance, but the RPZ seems to require no buildings at all in the RPZ, no structures.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, just needed that clarification.
Yeah. I mean, I think we'd like to see the building built, but there's certain things we can't. You don't want a driveway that's too close to an intersection, and you can't obviously have a building in an RPZ. But I mean, you could move the whole building west and put the stormwater and other stuff. It's a less attractive site plan, but it would conform with those two requirements.
All
that's my
right.
concerns.
Those are all your concerns. Any other commissioners have things they want to bring up? If not, then we will move to the main motion made by Paulson, seconded by Shaw, to find that the criteria for approval of an SIP are met and approve the SIP deferred effective date. Something sounds missing there. Upon completion of the now 11 conditions, including a change to item 2A to match item 1A from the previous resolution, and item 11 added to ask staff to confirm that the landscaping plan meets the zoning code requirements for native plantings. So all those in favor of approving the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. And I wanted to be noted that Commissioner Summers did leave. I don't know if
Yeah.
that was
Abstains.
announced. And she
You
can
go get
come back now.
Commissioner Summers. Thank you.
She can come back.
All right, our final item of business is the revision to the lighting ordinance, and staff are asking that we provide input on the revised ordinance and the lighting zones map and set a public hearing for the lighting ordinance for October 14th, 2025 at 7 PM.
Yeah, I can just go over some of the changes that we made based off of your feedback last time. So as part of the memo, we changed the 7 a.m. time to 6 a.m. And then we included this paragraph, which was mostly actually what we took from our zoning ordinance, exemptions granted by plan commission. So we just took similar language from there and inserted it into the lighting ordinance under I believe it's the waivers or exemptions section of that ordinance. We also included a size limit for neon lights. The 24 square feet comes from our projecting signs, since typically, neon signs, you see them projecting off a building or something like that. So we figured that was a similar type of size, and so anything larger than that would be prohibited, and they can be granted an exemption by plan commission if needed. I believe we have maybe one actual neon sign in Middleton. It's the Stam House one. So if they ever needed to replace it, that's, I think, the only one that we would really be able to review. And then I included some additional corrections to the lighting zone map based off of our discussions about conservancies at the last meeting. So I believe those were all the items that we had discussed.
Thank you, Daphne. Any comments from commissioners? Any clarifications needed?
Well, and this is not a zoning ordinance, so once it takes effect, everyone has to comply. There's no grandfathering in previous existing lighting, right?
I
There-
did not realize that. I assumed
there
that
is.
existing lighting was still approved. We
I thought
approved
that was
lighting.
stated in the ordinance, wasn't it?
Is it stated?
Yeah.
I believe there is.
But this is not a
something-
zoning ordinance. This is just a general ordinance of the city.
Correct, yeah.
Right.
But let's clarify Kurt's question. I want to make sure that we understand that.
Matt, can we ask you?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking, I mean, it is not a zoning ordinance, but I seem to recall there being some limited grandfathering. I mean, so if you've got existing lighting, you are not required to go out and replace all your lighting, non-conforming exterior lighting. So yeah, I think, 3304,
Yeah.
oh,
33.04 on the screen. Okay, yep. That makes sense.
Okay.
So the action that we'd be taking this evening is to set a public hearing.
Yes, set a public hearing for the lighting ordinance for October 14th, 2025 at 7 PM.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
No, go ahead. I will second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of setting a date for the public hearing for the lighting ordinance on October 14th, 2025 at 7 PM signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We've reached the end of our agenda and we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt.